Hi, welcome to Speak as One. I'm thrilled today because we have with us Stacy Overheu. Hi, Stacy. Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I met Stacy because we have some mutual friends in common who they actually did a story with us about a year ago, and that's Eduardo Perez and Martha Perez. Yeah, and so they have the pleasure of knowing you. Unfortunately, it's in a group that that seems to have so many wonderful people under such tragic circumstances.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the group that nobody wants to be in, but is very thankful that there is a group.
Yeah. And can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So it's the Survivors of Suicide group.
Mm-hmm.
And basically it's a group of people that just get together and share stories and experiences and feelings in a safe, no judgment, zone. And they just tell their stories of their loved ones who they've lost through suicide. And that's pretty much it. We just, we meet every first and third Tuesday of the month. And we used to meet face to face, but because of the pandemic, we now do a Zoom call. But it's really good that, people just get to share their feelings, It's just a safe space just to be able to talk, and because of suicide has the stigma on it sometimes still that people don't always feel safe to talk about things. And when you get in this group, there's an instant bond that happens because, okay, this person experienced something very similar,
right.
Yeah. And our group has people going through grief in all different stages. So, from people that have just lost someone or to people who have been there for years, who are just there to help try to give back and, that kind of thing. So,
yeah. And you are a part of this group because you have somebody in your life.
Yes.
You have somebody in your life that
yes, I lost my husband, Russell, 13 and a half years ago to suicide.
Okay.
So.
And when did you join the group?
I joined the group, I joined the group 11 months after his suicide. I actually waited myself. I tried to handle it on my own, and I just tried to process things on my own. And in some cases, I didn't process at all.
Yeah.
So for pretty much, I survived 11 months just kind of trudging along. And then I finally broke down. And when I finally broke down, I reached out to, at the time, our facilitator of the group her name was Linda. And I called her, and it just so happened the next day there was a meeting. Now, I actually had the phone number and the information of the group for 6 months prior to me seeking any kind of help, because I'm very introverted in that sense, and the idea of like going in front of a big group and talking was just like, oh, that was like, no.
Yeah, I understand.
But it was interesting because the minute I actually went to the group, I felt like very comfortable and very safe in that sense. And it was like, oh, all these people are feeling a lot of the same things that I'm feeling and are going through a lot of the same emotions. And it shocked me because, because I tried to do everything on my own, I was like, I thought I was alone. I thought, well, no one else is having these crazy thoughts in their heads. No one else are feeling these, emotions and stuff like that, until I actually went to the group. And then I was like, wow, there are other people like me. There are other people feeling this. And this is not crazy. These are very normal feelings, normal thoughts going through your head, because with the loss of someone from suicide, there is blame, guilt, shame, that comes with that loss that you don't necessarily have with some of the other losses, like someone who dies of cancer, or a loved one that passes away from a car accident or something.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So there's a whole nother level of emotions that you have to deal with. And if you've never been around suicide before, it's very it's very traumatizing in a sense. It's like very shocking. Like for myself, it was very shocking. So it was like, okay, how do you like completely build yourself back up from what everything you knew before is, you kind of rocked to the core. So you have to but then all of a sudden you realize, oh, there are a lot of other people just like you that are having these same thoughts and feelings. Just surprising.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you say about a tumor or a car wreck, because you know that you weren't directly involved in causing a tumor in somebody, or
Right.
or cancer, you know that you weren't, you didn't have any part of the car wreck if it was separate from you, or things like that. And I think with suicide, we don't understand that really it's the same way. We actually don't have a cause in them taking their lives either.
Right.
But you don't know that.
Right.
And I can understand where people feel that way, but I think it's so important for people to know that it wasn't because of you or anything you did or didn't do.
Exactly.
So
and once I started going to our group and found out that, oh, it's not just me. That it wasn't just me that I was the only one thinking these things and stuff like that. And also from a standpoint of I didn't really know a lot about mental illness, mental health, all of that until after. It's like hindsight is 20/20. I look back on it now, and I'm far more educated now on the subject. That I just was, I'm like, okay, I understand things. I see, I can look back and see the signs and see the, things like that I had no clue.
Yeah, so can you tell us about that, about how y'all met and how long you were married, and kind of, your life together?
We met when I was in high school. We actually worked together at a restaurant. It was my first job, he was 4 years older than me, and we started dating when I was in high school and he was in college, we were together 18 years. No, we were together 22 years. We were married for 18. We had built our whole life together. So for me, when Russell passed away, we were a couple in the sense that we grew up together, essentially. All of my adulthood was tied to him, So for us, it was like us against the world, because we lived in Austin and we moved away from, my family and his family. His family is from Dallas. And we were living here in Austin, and we built a life together here in Austin with friends and stuff. And then when he passed, it just became me. And so I had to figure out how to live a life without him. So it was no, I wouldn't say interesting. It was difficult for me in trying to figure out what to do next. You know, it was like one day he's here and the next day he's not. And that was hard for me to deal with, which is why I didn't deal with it for like 11 months. I don't recommend that ever.
Yeah.
I recommend for that everyone to, you know, seek some kind of help, guidance, you know, speak about it to whether you're talking to a counselor, a therapist, or a close friend, you know, your clergy, you know, whoever, but to talk.
Yeah, definitely talk about it.
You know, because for our life, I had a whole life with him, and then all of a sudden I didn't, and then I had to figure out, okay, what it had always been Stacy and Russell, like everything was Stacy and Russell, and then all of a sudden it's just Stacy, so it's like, wow.
Yeah, your identity definitely seems to change after some of these tragic.
Yes, your perspective changes on everything.
Yeah.
You know.
So did he show signs of struggling with mental illness or just even his mental health? Did he was he having a hard time that you knew of?
He did struggle with depression and so forth. He had his own inner demons. You know, he had his own family history of stuff, and I always knew, and it was interesting because when I started going to the group and we started all talking about it, everyone talked about how a lot of times the person that you're talking about, it's like they have very similar stories in that people show you what they want you to see. So for Russell, he was extremely funny, intelligent, friendly, everything to the outside world. Like everyone loved him. He was like the life of the party. He had the best laugh, best smile. But when he was around me, it was when I would see him withdraw. Like I knew the doubts that he had. He never felt like he deserved a lot of the accolades that he received, and you know, the love. He was always surprised when people would give him gifts for his birthday and things like that, because he didn't think he deserved them. You know, and it was just an inner thing that he fought his entire life. And it didn't matter how much people on the outside would try and build him up. It comes from within. And that was the thing that, you know, I had one of his best friends after Russell passed said to me that he had said that he didn't realize that Russell struggled so much. And I told him, I said, yes, he did. You know, I mean, he did struggle. And he goes, you know, he told me, he goes, you know, I think you're the reason why he was here as long as he was. He passed away when he was 42. And he was going to be 43, but he was 42 at the time. But he had said that because Russell had told me once that he didn't think he would make it to 50. And I could believe it. Like, I was like, I myself not realizing the extent of mental illness and what depression looks like, because I always thought depression looked like a certain way. I thought depression looked like someone who never got out of bed, who was mopey, who was sad, who was crying, you know, because that's the kind of things that you saw on TV and, you know, in the media. That's the kind of things you heard about, people that just wouldn't get out of bed or wouldn't do anything. No, my husband was a functional person who, did get out of bed, and he worked and he laughed and he joked around. He was a huge prankster. Everyone, at his funeral talked about all the jokes that he did, all the pranks he did, because that was him on the outside.
Right. On the inside, he was just struggling.
Yes, but on the inside, he'd struggled.
Did you ever think he would take this measure, or did you just think that he had, like you said, there was some sadness every now and then, and he'd get through it?
I never thought he would. No, I never ever thought he would take his own life.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it, I always said, was my own arrogance and my own naivete, as I said, that I didn't believe that he would ever leave me, because like I said, it was us against the world. We built a life here together, so it was us just doing things together. And even right up until the end, he was still trying to take care of me, tried to put things in order, tried to do things before his death that I found out after.
Oh, he was planning.
He was planning that I didn't know about. So it's stuff like that you just go, how could I have not seen that? But now I know these things. Now I see these things. Now I know the little comments he made, or just. But they were all like small things, like minor things that you would see. It wasn't the, I can't get out of bed. Yeah. It wasn't the, huge crying things. He didn't cry like that. He didn't. You didn't even really necessarily see him sad in that sense. I do know that he would withdraw, like he would go off and play his games, and stuff, and on the computer he'd play in his little man cave.
Mm-hmm.
But I also know that he had a stressful job, and he would go and that was his decompressing,
right?
Which I was, that to me made sense.
Yeah, and he was a police officer, is that correct?
Yes.
Right, very stressful.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes. He was an undercover narcotics officer in the end. And so it was a stressful position.
Mm-hmm. And to come home and for him just to go and retreat,
right.
It makes sense that you would think that that's absolutely normal and needed.
Yes, exactly. Very needed.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or he would go and play. He used to play guitar, so he had lots of guitars in his man cave, and he would go play his guitar for a little while, and that was it. It was fine. It was like, okay. But I did know that he had a lot of demons, in the sense that he didn't feel worthy.
Yeah.
And knowing mental illness now, how that truly can, just mess with your outcome, your thought process, in the sense of, because I think that he thought he was better off, that I was better off without him. Like I was doing, that he was doing, that he was setting me free. Which couldn't have been further from the truth.
Do you hear a lot of that in your group, that everybody kind of felt like, everybody seems to say that they think that the person who has taken their life feels like everybody else would benefit or be better off without them being here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's a very common thing that everyone has said in the group.
Yeah.
That is, that people feel that you should just be better off. And I think they might think, oh, you'll be sad, but you won't be that sad. You'll move on. You'll get over it, you know. And one of the things that I have said in the group is that, you know, Russell never. I know for a fact that Russell didn't kill himself to hurt me. That wasn't his intention. I also don't think it was a selfish act in the sense that, you know, a lot of people talk about suicide being extremely selfish. Mm-hmm. I do not think that. I don't think it was very selfish. I think that he just got to a point that he was tired, and he just thought that that he was releasing me from all of the pain and suffering. And, you know, I really think that when someone is suffering from mental illness, that they don't necessarily have the same logic that, you know, someone who's not suffering. Mm-hmm. So, you know, you have the normal fight or flight mentality in a normal situation. But I think that the person who is suffering from mental illness doesn't have that same thought process. Mm-hmm. So when you have someone who isn't mentally ill, try to figure out, oh, why would you do that? Why would you, you know? It's because they're not thinking logically. It's not a logical thought process. So they start thinking these things in their, that, oh, you'd be better off without me. You know, everyone would be happier. You wouldn't have to go through, you know, it's there. Those aren't normal thoughts. Mm-hmm. And you don't think about the fact that, oh, they might be sad, but they'll get over it. It won't be that bad. They'll move on. They'll find someone else. No, that's not how it works.
Right.
You know, that's not.
Well, and when you said, and I have, you know, heard like this, there's definitely a stigma that people think that it is selfish or it's the easy way out, and they actually think they're being selfless by helping everybody else,
right? Because
they don't feel that they're worthy anymore, or maybe it's too hard for them to keep pretending, because even though he's lively and jokester and loved being around people, it was probably incredibly stressful for him to keep that up, because inside he couldn't let anybody, you know, see, oh wait, I struggle too. And you know, I hope we're starting to break that message that it's okay to be human and have emotions, and especially for men, you know, like it's okay for you not to always be happy, and to find a group of men who celebrate also. Yes, let's go have fun together, but let's start, you know, talking about open and honest conversations around, you know, if they're having days where life doesn't feel so good.
Right.
You know.
Yes.
So that's just one thing I've noticed, and I'm definitely no expert, but the only thing I just kind of feel like I hear when people come and talk about that, it almost feels like the person that has taken their life it's always incredibly social, life of the party, wants to help others, and you just have to wonder if it was really hard for them to keep that up all the time when they were struggling, if more than half that time inside their own body.
Yes. Yeah. I know that with Russell, excuse me, one of the things that he mentioned in his note that he left is that he said he was very tired. He said he was exhausted, and although this wasn't a terminal illness, his words, it wasn't a terminal illness, he was exhausted, he was tired. Meaning that it's like what you said, it's a lot to, you know, keep up the facade that you're okay, you know. And I mean, for myself, I know that when, after Russell passed, you know, when he first died, people would, are of course there helping you and, you know, checking in on you and so forth. And you're like, and then after a few weeks, months, all those start dying off, you know, as far as like the people asking how you're doing and so forth. And then you're kind of like on your own. And for me, I wasn't one to, every time someone asked me to how I'm doing, I didn't just spill my guts. Because people will ask and then they don't really want to know the full story. Like, they don't really want to know when you say, how are you doing? And you're like, oh, I'm sobbing in the, you know, on my way to work, and or, you know, I'm crying in the shower. They don't really want to hear that, you know. So you have a tendency to go, you know, I have good days and bad days. That was my line all the time. I have good days and bad days. But so I experienced some of like Russell's depression. I went through a depressant period that I was just like, wow, I can see how it gets to be hard to function, you know. We talked about in our group that actually Peter, one of our facilitator of the group, he mentioned it's like if we were a group of horses, like wild horses running in a pack, and you were a zebra, but you basically put on a horse costume to run with the pack, and so you're running in with the pack, you know, and you look like a horse, but inside you're still a zebra. You're still this weird, you know, striped thing that isn't quite the same as a horse, but kind of looks like a horse, you know, but you're not quite the same. So that can get tiring, you know. And I went back to work not long after Russell passed, and you have to function. You have to like continue. Life still goes on, you know, so you still have to, you know, pay your mortgage, pay your car payment, do all this stuff. So you still have to make money. So you still have to like look like a normal person and talk like a normal person, and you can't like just sit in an office and cry. So that became exhausting. So I got a better understanding of what Russell was going through, and I only suffered through it for a few months before I realized this is exhausting. And it's like, and I got to my breaking point at 11 months, you know, before I was like, I need help. Russell never sought help for anything. So he had years of that.
Yeah. And it seems like, you know, if people could understand that if you can go get help, and this is what I was just explaining earlier, is that, you know, you're going to suffer for 10, 11, 12, however many years you suffer. But if you go and you get help, and let's say, you know, I think people, when they think about getting help, they think it's exhausting. It's going to take a long time, you know, and it is. You have to talk about things that feel uncomfortable, and it does take a long time. But after a few months, you start feeling a little bit better. A year, you start feeling much better. 2 years, 3 years. So here, it's you go and you can get help. And it'll take a couple, maybe a year, 2, 3 of your life. Or you can just sit there in it.
Right. Yes.
And that's why I just, you know, feel like it's so important to say this message, like, please go get help, because in the grand scheme of things, it's a very small amount of time of your life.
Yes.